Meow! Hello and welcome back. Last week we made some stays for my witchy Halloween costume, and this week we've got to make some stuff to go under the stays. So I'm going to be making a chemise and I'm going to be making a skirt. I'm super excited. The chemise is going to be made from a silk chiffon from Mood Fabrics, and then the skirt is just going to be some black wool that I found in my stash. So using up some stash fabrics, but I'm a little bit nervous about the silk chiffon because it was kind of expensive and I kind of hate cutting silk chiffon. So it'll be an adventure. Yeah, so that's basically the plan. If you haven't seen the last video, you should check that out because the stays are a little bit more exciting to see, but you need a base for stays, as exciting as stays are. So that's what we'll be doing this time. Can you say hi? Oh, my sweet girl. Meow. Meow. I love you so much. The chemise I'm going to be using a Simplicity pattern, I think it's Simplicity, and I'll show that to you guys later. And then for the skirt, I'm going to just be making essentially a dirndl skirt, so that's just going to be a whole bunch of rectangles gathered onto a waistband, and that's pretty much it. It's fairly straightforward, so I don't think this will be too complicated, hopefully, and I should be able to get done quickly as long as the sewing of silk chiffon goes okay. Yeah, let's get started. What? Why are you so whiny? What's up? What's up? Are you hungry? Where are you going? Where do you think you're going? Alright, let's get started with cutting fabric. Alright, this is the pattern that I'm going to be using. I was wrong, it's Butterick and not Simplicity, but it's Butterick 3906, and I'm going to be making view B. That is like a double puff sleeve with a, I don't know, a bell, I guess, at the bottom. Baby bed. She's very whiny today. And then I think I'm just going to not do the ruffle. I think instead I'll extend it to the length that the ruffle would be. I don't really want a ruffle on my chemise. That seems kind of silly for a really basic chemise. So we're just going to omit this ruffle, extend the length of the pattern by however long this ruffle is, and that's gonna be it. I'm gonna finish all the edges, I think, with just like a 1/4 inch rolled hem, and then all of the seams are going to be finished with a French seam because silk chiffon frays like crazy, and then it's going to get some elastic in all of the sleeves and stuff because we're going for simplicity here and not for any kind of historical accuracy. That'll be fine. I don't think it'll be very visible because of how much fabric is getting gathered into this. Yay, that's it. Okay, let's cut. I've changed my mind for this skirt. I decided instead of doing a dirndl style skirt, I'm going to do a circle, like a full circle that is a little more than knee length, I think, and then do a rectangular ruffle all along the bottom edge. This is kind of based off of a dress I just got, the Selkie Lickedy Splitz Ritz gown. I wore that in my last video and it just had such nice twirling ability, so I measured out the fabric and I have enough that I am just going to do that instead. I say just going to do that like it's not a lot harder and more work than doing a dirndl, but oh well, that it's for the look, so we're gonna do it. I have gotten all of the skirt pieces together, so it's now a big circle donut. I've also gotten the ruffle pieces together, so that's also a big donut, and I've serged the bottom edge of the main circle skirt. I've done this because I don't know, I was copying this Selkie dress, and I think they did that because this bottom edge is going to be hidden behind the ruffles. The ruffle just gets top applied, so it won't be seen at all, and it's a huge pain to narrow hem a circle. Circle skirts have like huge hems because, you know, a circle makes a very large circumference when it's long. So that means that there's a whole ton of hem, and narrow hemming on a curve is just, it's not a fun thing to do. So I think that's probably why they serged it rather than narrow hemmed it, even though narrow hemming is obviously prettier. The ruffle is going to get narrow hemmed, but because the ruffle will just be top applied over this, that will be entirely concealed. So I think that's probably why they did it, and that's why I'm going to do it. Also, before I add the ruffle, I want to do the waistband and the closures because it's going to be a lot easier to just maneuver under the machine when it doesn't have all that extra stuff hanging off the bottom. So basically the waist circle is going to get gathered, and I'm going to put that onto a waistband. Before the waistband goes on, it gets a placket. It's going to have a continuous bound placket. I wanted to do a zipper, but I don't have any black zippers. So we're just gonna do a placket, and then I'll get some snaps on it, and then the waistband will obviously get some hooks and eyes. I wanted to show you guys how to do a lap zipper, but because I don't have any zippers the right color, we're gonna do a placket. So I'll show you how to do the continuous bound placket, and the next time I make a skirt, then I will show you guys how to do the lap zipper. Okay, so here are the instructions for the continuous bound placket. It's not super in focus, sorry about that. So you cut your binding, obviously. You need a binding to make a bound placket. These instructions are assuming that you are cutting a slit into the fabric, but I'm not, I'm using a seam, so I don't have to reinforce it like this. Basically what you do is you spread your little slit open so that it makes a straight line, and then you just want to attach the placket as though it were a straight line, if that makes sense. I unfortunately can't remember what book this came out of. I think it probably came out of the Reader's Digest Complete Guide to Sewing. However, I think it came out of an edition that I don't have. Unfortunately, there are 2 editions of the Reader's Digest Guide to Sewing, and they do contain different instructions. So that's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. So I'm in the process of looking for the other edition, but I don't have it. So I think my edition does not have the instructions for the continuous bound placket. So I'm just going to show you guys how I do it anyways. So here's my seam, right? This is the center back seam, and I've sewn it up basically up to where I want this placket to end. Usually I take that from 9 inches from the waistband, since that is about the widest part of my hips is at around 9 inches below my waist. So with the 1/2 inch of seam allowance at the waist, this is a 9.5 inch gap basically. You just basically open it up like this, and I have my placket here. I've cut it so that it is the right length to go all the way across. The main difference between like a normal placket and the continuous bound placket is that with a normal placket, you just do one side at a time, and these are separate, and then they get finished down here separately and then stitched together after the whole thing. But this gets sewn as one complete piece. You want to sew right sides together as you do with everything else. And in order for it to turn smoothly, you want to have the full seam allowance at the top near the waistline, and then where it's going to be folding back on itself here at this point, you want it to have very little seam allowance. So to prep for that, I'm just going to mark my seam allowance here. I'm using a 1/2 inch. So with the center marked here, I'm just going to lay this center part basically right onto there. I guess for the continuous bound placket, you would definitely choose that over 2 separate plackets if you were cutting the slit, because it's a seam at the back. It doesn't really matter. It actually might be easier to do 2 separate plackets. I prefer the continuous bound placket because it's a little less work in my opinion. So at these ends here, I'm matching it up so that the seam allowances are the same. So this is just lined up to here, and it'll get stitched at a 1/2 inch on both sides. Do the same for this side as well. And then because this is down by that seam allowance mark, the placket is going to get stitched at a 1/2 inch seam allowance the entire way down, but the skirt opening is going to get gradually less and less seam allowance as we get towards the middle and then transition back into the full seam allowance at the other end. Okay, now that I've got that stitched, hopefully it's a little easier to see what I meant. This is the skirt side. It starts at a 1/2 inch and then it tapers down to almost nothing down by the middle of the placket. But when I'm on the placket side, it stays an even 1/2 inch all the way across. And that's just so that when you are turning it, when it folds back on itself, there isn't any bulk there, because it'll make it bubble up if there's a lot of extra seam allowance right here. So now what I'm gonna do is press all of the seam allowance towards the placket, and then it just gets folded in on itself like that, and then either top stitched or hand stitched with the slip stitch, and that's it. That's the whole placket. It's pretty simple once you can figure out like what you're doing and get the hang of it. It just seems kind of complicated at first, but it's my favorite way to close up garments. I like using snaps and hooks and eyes more than I like using zippers, because zippers, I don't know, they tend to break if you're not super careful, especially the flimsy plastic ones. And then they're a pain to replace. Like, I hate replacing zippers, but it's a lot less time consuming to replace snaps and hooks and eyes, and they also tend to break less frequently. The last things that you do for a placket, to stitch a little triangle across the placket here, and that just keeps it so that the placket doesn't open up. This is nice and secure there. And then figure out which direction you want it to open. Typically for women's clothing, it goes like this. I don't know how else to explain that, but basically the right side is usually the outer side. So if you have on the front, if you've ever noticed that you have like a sweater or a button up or something, usually it will close right over left. And then same for the back. If you've noticed on some skirts or on your bra or something, it closes right over back. It's the opposite for men's clothing. It has to do with whether or not you dressed yourself in like the time periods when people still generally had servants. So as a woman, you didn't tend to dress yourself, so that was easier for someone else to do, whereas men tend to dress themselves. But I just press this right side over so that it's folded under, and that will make it so that this just closes all nicely like this, and I need to press it a little bit harder, but that's it. That's how you install a placket. So now I'm gonna gather the waist up and insert it into the waistband, and that's it for the top half. Where are you going? My Patterns of Fashion one that I ordered just arrived. Super exciting. It's not going to be super useful for my next project, but maybe my next project I'm hopefully doing something kind of Bridgerton something kind of Bridgerton inspired. So that will cover those years, thankfully, but it's not going to cover my next project. Oh well, I'm super excited. I have seen the books before because my professors have them, but then they were out of print and super expensive, and now they are reprinted. Woohoo! Okay, back to making my witch costume. So because chiffon is super slippery, I'm using serrated scissors. I don't know if you can tell, but this edge right here is serrated, so it's not smooth like most scissors, and that helps grip the chiffon so that it doesn't kind of slip away as I'm cutting it. Super useful. If you have a lot of chiffon to cut, you should get it. Hello. Thank you, sweet girl. Thank you guys for watching. I think that this project was a success. I don't know, I'm really happy with this chemise. I wore it to the art museum and it was comfy and also very cute, and I look like a princess. Yeah, I don't know, it was pretty straightforward. I finished all the seams, front seams, so everything is like really nicely enclosed, and then I did a narrow rolled hem for all of the hem finishes, so everything is really super enclosed and it's great, so no fraying. I've already worn this outside and it held up pretty well. I just hand washed it, so that's cool. Didn't run into any problems with anything. I made it just the right length of the pattern, and I don't think I even made any alterations to the pattern at all. I just didn't add a casing. I just sewed the elastic straight to it because I don't like making casings. It's annoying. I guess this is a casing, so there's that. And then the skirt, I changed my plan halfway through deciding what to do, but it ended up okay. When I was cutting it, I kind of forgot to account for how much ruffle I needed, so I ended up having to cut the whole like tier of ruffle in half, so it was shorter like top and bottom but longer in the amount of ruffle, so I kind of had to make that decision on the fly, but it worked out okay, so that's good. Measure twice, cut once. I didn't, I just measured and then I cut, but it's okay, it worked out fine. And it's a nice big circle like this. Micah's helping me film this right now, so he's doing all of the fancy camera work, whereas usually my outros are just on a tripod, but now I get to show you the whole costume. Don't go away. Stop that. So no pattern for the skirt. It was just a big circle skirt with a ruffle. I copied the Selkie dress that I got recently in design, so you know, just rip off clothing that you like and make your own. And then the chemise, I showed the pattern earlier, so everything went fairly smoothly. Woohoo! Yeah, I hope you guys liked this video. If you enjoyed watching it, please give it a thumbs up. If you like everything, if you want to make your own now, I don't know, drop a comment and let me know if you do make your own. I would love to see it. Oh, this skirt also is not like super poofy enough on its own, so I'm wearing another skirt underneath it. So now it's got a little bit more volume, but for costume purposes, I needed a little extra oomph. If you want to see the rest of this costume, then please subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. Okay, bye!